Hi, everyone. Good evening. Carl Steinbeck here from San Antonio, Texas. Want to talk to you about the opening statements today on the Massachusetts case involving the Lindsay Clancy murder case, where she is accused of killing 3 of her children, young children at that. There are 3 of them under 5. I think one of them was 6 months old. And the whole issue is whether she's mentally responsible for doing so. The defense is not disputing the fact that she killed her children. That's indisputable. The whole issue is she liably, criminally, in their criminal justice system, or will she be found not guilty, but in other words, convicted by virtue of her mental insanity, in so many words, will be committed to a mental institution instead of a regular prison. So this is something that's very, very much a difficult thing, I think, for the prosecution inherently, even though this is a very tragic case. It's so disturbing on so many levels, and it's just so horrific to even think about. It's just very, very gut wrenching to be able to sit through some of this stuff. And in any event, it's one of these deals where this defendant, Lindsay, she was taking different types of pills, psychiatric medicines, to try to cope with postpartum depression. So postpartum depression can be a horrific thing. Those of you that have had it can relate to it. Those of us who hadn't cannot, but we just have only heard horror stories about it. And so I think that her trying to get help and being on different meds is something that is, on the other hand, could be sympathetic to the jury. So you got the aggravating nature of it, and you're thinking, how could a mother do this? This is so wicked and mean and evil. But on the flip side of it, was she in the right state of mind? So it's just a unique type of animal from the criminal justice system here in America to be focusing on so much on the mindset of the defendant. And here, one that's been on a number of different psych meds. We're going to hear more details about it today through the testimony of the first witness, her ex-husband, Patrick Clancy. The prosecution brought out different types of meds she was on, but the how all the different types of meds interacted with each other. Did she take enough of them to cause her to lose her sanity? All that kind of stuff we still need to hear more from, but it's very much a case where the prosecution having the burden of proof to prove beyond reasonable doubt that it was not a situation where the meds overrode her mind, her volitional thinking, and things of that nature. I'm not going to get into the technical legal language now, but if you just stop to think about it, it's like, this is so nuts and crazy that a mother's going to kill her children. She's a nurse at that. She's had a successful life. She's never been in trouble with the law before. She's got a great relationship with her parents, anybody she's been in contact with at her job, and her just everywhere she's in society. She's a perfect success and a great member of society. So have somebody go off the deep end like this, it makes you wonder what happened, right? So that's what the jury is going to be thinking, is like, what happened? Is this really her, or is this something but for the medicine? That's what the jury's going to have to say, is but for the medicine, is this really something she did on her own? So the prosecution, let's see what they have to argue here, and then I'll cover the defense as well. So this is very, very much unique in that never so much in a criminal trial will the medication that a defendant's been on be such a issue as to their mental state. Normally you have drugs being used to kill somebody. Here, where this not illegal drugs, but prescription drugs of such a variety and a toxic cocktail of such that the mind was damaged to the extent that it drives them nuts and they have no control. So I don't have all the information yet. None of us do. So we'll see how this plays out. But we'll get a general roadmap, as the judge says, based on these openings. So I'm going to walk through these openings with you, give different comments, and then at the end, we'll take a few questions, and then I'm going to probably get into a few few minutes of the testimony of the the ex-husband, who sometime after this happened in January of 23, he's since then had divorced her, and he's remarried as of this year, a few months ago, and he's living in New York City, or New York City area. So let's go ahead and jump in now, covering this from Law and Crime.
Cora. She had just turned 5. She was sweet, silly, smart. She loved sparkly dresses and wearing bows in her hair. She loved princesses and baby dolls. She even tried to convince her preschool teachers at the beginning that her name was Sophia because she loved the Disney character Sophia the First so very much. Dawson. He was 3, a boy's boy. He was a bit rambunctious, but funny, full of energy. He loved trucks, construction trucks, fire trucks, and he spoke with a raspy little voice. Callan. Callan was just 8 months old. Always smiling, with chunky cheeks, a sweet little baby. We are here, ladies and gentlemen.
So right there, you see some emotions from Lindsay. So she's not sitting there cold-hearted, unmoved by this. She's thinking of her daughter. It looks like, I don't think she's faking this. And I'd be curious to know if she's on any meds right now to try to cope with this. So meds can numb you to things that are going on in your life, including a trial and things that you should have emotion on. So I think these are sincere emotions.
They are not. They were strangled, deliberately and meticulously, killed by this defendant on January 24th of 2023. One by one, she wrapped exercise bands around each one of the kids' necks and pulled until their little bodies were limp and lifeless. First Dawson, then Cora, and finally Callan. Your job, ladies and gentlemen, is not easy in this case. The evidence will be difficult to see, to hear, to process. Testimony of witnesses, family, friends, teachers, people who knew the Clancy family, people who saw them regularly, people who saw them on the day in which this defendant killed them. They're all going to come before you. And it may be heartbreaking to hear what they have to say. You'll see photographs of the crime scene. You'll hear testimony from first responders.
Those of you that follow my channel, her reading from this script this much is troubling. It's not as good advocacy as she could have. So she's trying to humanize and bring out the horrors of this case. But this kind of stuff here that she's not referring to complex details of a case where you're not having something on a slideshow or something. So I'd recommend somebody have better firsthand knowledge off the top of your head, being able to talk about these kind of details. But here we go.
Responders, they're going to tell you about what they discovered when they came into the Clancy home at 47 Summer Street in Duxbury on January 24th. You'll hear evidence about the defendant during that time period, observations of her physical appearance, her demeanor. You'll hear testimony about what she was reporting to her friends and family and doctors during this time period. The list of witnesses is quite long. Law enforcement, firefighters, friends, family, teachers, crime scene investigators, forensic scientists, toxicologists, medical examiners, experts.
You're sort of losing people just going off, rattling off all these titles and whatever, because it's not very compelling here, prosecutor.
We expect over the next few weeks that you'll be able to, or will be able to present to you a clear picture of what was occurring in the Clancy household on January 24th of 2023. We ask that you keep an open mind when you're hearing this evidence, and during the course of the trial, don't forget that you use your common sense and your life experience. Those are things that you bring as jurors to the courtroom every day, and it's what's going to take you into the deliberation room at the end of this trial.
I mean, focus on the facts, what happened, just get right to it, talking about what you need to bring to the table as jurors and all that. Just early into the opening here is a bit off.
So what happened? On January 24th, 2023, it had recently snowed. It was in fact a Tuesday. Tuesdays were days that Cora and Dawson usually went to preschool. They attended the Learning Sprouts preschool in Duxbury, but they didn't attend on Tuesdays. So on this day, they were home. On this particular day, Cora, who had just turned 5, had an appointment at the doctor's, an annual checkup. And so the defendant brought her first thing in the morning to the doctor's. Defendant's husband, Patrick Clancy, was home and he was caring for Callan and Dawson while defendant took Cora to the doctor. Pretty normal. You'll hear and see that Patrick and the defendant exchanged text messages that morning. Patrick sends a photo of Dawson, who had just dressed himself that day and he was jumping for joy. And he sends that text to the defendant while she's at the doctor. And while at the doctor, the defendant sends a text of Cora and her little Johnny and mask to Patrick. When the defendant and Cora returned home that morning, Patrick went downstairs to his basement office to do work, same as he had normally done on any other day since returning from paternity leave. And then the defendant was charged with caring for the kids for the rest of the day. She put Callan down for a nap, bundled up Cora and Dawson, took them outside to the backyard, and played in the snow. They built a snowman. The defendant sent pictures of the snowman and the kids in the snow to Patrick when he's working in the basement, and her mom, who was living in Connecticut, who had just been there that weekend but had gone home. The day proceeds as normal. You'll hear Patrick describe it as a good day, actually. In the late afternoon, around 4 p.m., the defendant searched on her phone for kids' Miralax. She searched takeout freebie, and she opened the Apple Maps on her phone and searched the route that it would take to get from their house to the 3V restaurant in Plymouth. She searched how much time and how far it was. Now, this restaurant had been a place that the family had eaten before, but wasn't their normal takeout spot. She also called CVS and asked them about the kids' Pedialax or Miralax. And that's because at the doctor earlier that day, the doctor had recommended a laxative for Cora because she had some stomach issues. She had complained of an upset tummy at school the day before, you'll hear. She had some issues where she didn't like to go to the bathroom at school, a little bit embarrassed. So they suggested the Pedialax. So she calls CVS and she confirms that they actually have it at their local CVS in Kingston. Then she sends a text to Patrick and asks if he wants to get takeout, if 3V is okay. She didn't feel like cooking dinner. It was a long day. He says, sure. She calls in the order. When Patrick leaves the house around 5:15 that evening, everything is normal, seems normal. He sees Dawson eating chicken nuggets and green beans on the couch before he walks out the door. Patrick leaves to go to 3V, and he's going to stop at CVS on the way there. That's when the clock starts, ladies and gentlemen. The defendant knows that Patrick has to stop at CVS, go to 3V. She knows that it's about 5 miles from their house to get to the restaurant. She knows approximately how much time she has for him to go there and come back. She then takes the children down into the basement. She separates Dawson from Cora and Callan, and then she proceeds to wrap exercise bands around each child's neck and pull until they are dead. She leaves the bands wrapped around each child's neck and goes back upstairs. In the kitchen, she gets a knife, and then she proceeds to the second floor of the home. In the middle of this, she misses a call from Patrick. He's at CVS. She misses the call. She calls him right back, and they talk for 14 seconds. Nothing that she does or says in that phone call is of concern to Patrick. He proceeds on his task, and she proceeds.
She's breathing pretty heavy there, and we don't see any tears going down her face, but I think she's probably still in a state of some shock that this has actually happened to her children. Yeah, this is so bizarre. Using those stretchy bands to strangle your kids in the basement, and just what would have been going through the kids' minds as they're being choked out. I mean, this is so horrible. And strangulation is in and of itself, I remember hearing from forensic folks, is one of the most cruel ways to die.
It's with hers. She goes to the second floor master bedroom, locks the door, crushes up some pills, and attempts to take her own life. She uses the knife she got in the kitchen to slash her wrists and her neck.
Yeah.
She moves the bed away from the wall, away from the window. She opens that window and goes out. She lands on the cold, hard ground. Shortly thereafter, around 6 p.m., Patrick comes home. He's got the takeout bag and the CVS bag with the medicine. He enters into the house through the mudroom door into the kitchen area, places the bags down. It's eerily quiet.
So to think that she would have put him through that, putting those kids through that, and then putting him through that, and then putting herself through that. I mean, it's like so unbelievably horrific.
He calls to the kids, no answer. He calls to the defendant, no answer. He takes out his phone and dials the number for Lindsay's phone, defendant's phone, no answer. He then goes upstairs and finds the master bedroom door locked. He opens it and enters the room, sees blood and the window open. He then goes to the backyard, and that's where he finds the defendant. She's on the ground outside that window, moaning and mumbling. At 6:11 p.m., he calls 911 for help. First responders arrive to the home almost immediately. He's still on the phone with 911 when the responders arrive, and they go right to the backyard and tend immediately to the defendant. While they're with the defendant, Patrick tells the first responders, "I need to find my kids." He had asked the defendant where the kids were, and she told them they were in the basement. So when he went in the house, that's the first place he went, down into the basement. He's still on the phone with 911 when he finds each child with an exercise band still wrapped around their neck. He screams for help, and he says, "He killed the kids." Efforts made to resuscitate Cora and Dawson were futile, but first responders from Duxbury and the surrounding communities were persistent, and they kept trying to resuscitate them all the way to the hospital. But when they arrived at the hospital, there was nothing more that medical staff could do for Cora and Dawson. The staff at Beth Israel were able to get a heartbeat on Callan, but he never started breathing on his own. He never regained consciousness. He had no brain activity. Nonetheless, he was transferred to Boston Children's Hospital, where he died 3 days later on January 27th. The defendant was taken to South Shore Hospital and then transported subsequently to Brigham and Women's in Boston. She had multiple traumas, including spinal injuries, as well as superficial injuries to both her wrists and her neck. She is paralyzed. We expect during the course of this trial that you'll hear the defendant.
My understanding, she's paralyzed. I've heard different versions. She's paralyzed from the neck down or from the waist down or chest down. So I think it's probably from the chest or waist.
Made claims that either right after Patrick left the house or after he called her from the CVS, depending on which version of the events she's telling, she heard a voice, a male voice, a voice that she had never heard before, a voice that she never heard again. And that voice told her that it was her last chance, that she had to kill the kids so that she could kill herself. She immediately took action when she heard the voice, with no direction or details from this so-called voice, and she killed the children. Once she killed the children, the voice stopped. When you consider this information in the course of the trial, ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you consider the source, the timing, the substance of her statements about this voice. You're also going to hear from, or you may hear from, forensic psychologists.
Okay, so the source. Oh, really? Okay, so the source is not her. It's not made up in her own mind. It's not coming from her own mind. So stay tuned to that.
Psychologists and psychiatrists who talk about what's called command hallucinations and voices that people hear before they do something. And when you hear that testimony, I ask that you keep in mind the details of what she's saying the voice told her and the details of when this voice spoke to her. Another important thing to remember throughout the course of this trial is that this is not a case about the Lindsay Clancy that sits before you today. This case is about the Lindsay Clancy on January 24th, 2023, at the time of the crimes. This was not a woman in the throes of psychosis on January 24th, 2023. This was a woman who acted intentionally, rationally, and swiftly to accomplish a very specific goal: to kill. You'll see and hear evidence about all the things that she did that day, what she did in the days leading up to this incident, leading to the murders. You'll hear her spending time with her family and friends. You'll hear her appearing to be in good spirits and doing better for all intents and purposes. On that very day, you'll hear she interacted with people at the doctor's office. She came home and took care of the kids. She talked to people on the phone and via text message. The evidence will show you she was not psychotic that day.
Okay, I can just tell you that people completely taken over by different psych meds can have lucid moments where they act normal and do things that could look calculating, but it's really just the medicine kicking in and taking over. I'll get into some more details later on about things I've heard or seen firsthand that will sort of make you step back and think, wow, this stuff can really mess with your thinking processes.
Throughout the evidence in this trial, you will learn about the defendant being the classic overachiever in school, in her personal life, in her nursing career. She was someone who liked to control every little detail of her life, of her family's life. In contrast to pictures you'll see of the doting mother, the dedicated nurse, you'll also see a side of Lindsay Clancy that's different. Somebody extremely controlling, meticulous, and manipulative. The days were laid out with specificity. Strict schedules were expected to be maintained. Food was planned carefully. Sleep was scheduled to the minute. And in the time after Callan was born, her last baby, the family had to adjust. And by all sources that I expected to hear at that trial, that summer was great. But after Patrick had finished his paternity leave and was back to work full time, when she no longer had a nanny to watch the baby, do laundry, tidy up the house, follow her schedule, when she was responsible for it all, it was hard. It was hard for her to maintain that control. It was hard for her to bond with her kids. And in efforts to maintain control, she withheld information from her husband, from her doctors. She reported serious symptoms that were inconsistent with her daily activities, you'll hear. And ultimately, on January 24th, 2023, the defendant made a calculated decision. This was a woman who no longer liked the life she thought she wanted. It was getting harder and harder to control. And when she saw the opportunity to escape, she made the selfish choice to take it and to take Cora, Dawson, and Callan first before attempting to take her own life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a public debate about women's mental health and how the medical system treats women. This case is about.
Well, you have to deal with that, counselor. You're going to have to explain to the jury. You have the burden of proof to show that none of this could have affected her. There's no reasonable doubt that it's like a but-for test. Medicine did not affect her in any way. How can you say that you can prove beyond reasonable doubt that medicine did not affect this? So we'll see. This is a really high burden of proof. So she's making it sound like this is not a big deal, a big burden that she has to prove to this jury. So she, of course, because the defense is conceding the defendant caused these 3 murders of her children, the state has an easy time with that. But when you're looking at the other issue of mental responsibility, that is a really tough thing. And you do have to get into what was her mind really thinking at the time. So that's tough to do. And if you got the burden of proof, not the defense, that can really make this much more of a pro-defense state in that regard.
This defendant, Lindsay Clancy, there is no dispute that she was dealing with mental health issues during this time period prior to the murders.
Oh, wait, now you're saying that she was, okay? So which is it? Are you going to talk about your burden of proof?
There'll be medical records, medical doctors, mental health professionals that will talk about treatment, prescriptions, hospital visits.
Wait a minute. She just got done saying that wasn't about a debate about mental health. Well, if you bring in all these people in, it is a debate.
All that's going to be before you. The evidence will show that this defendant had a means and access to mental health that most people don't. And she chose to deal with her mental health issues in the worst way. She chose to manipulate her providers, seek out the quick and easy fix when she was feeling depressed and anxious. And when she didn't get what she expected, she chose an alternate route. She sought a different doctor. She changed medications after days. She disengaged from treatment when she didn't like the plan.
Why are you talking about all this mental status if it's not an issue?
After only 4 months in treatment, she made a choice, a deliberate and intentional decision that she did not want to try anymore. And because no one could take care of her kids the way she wanted them to, she had to take them with her. Despite all the precision that she exhibited that day, you'll hear the timing of it all, the swiftness of the killings, overcoming the interruption of Patrick's phone call, what she did not anticipate was that she would not be able to complete the act by killing herself. Ladies and gentlemen, people with mental illness commit crimes every day and are responsible for them. The fact that someone may suffer or have a mental illness, a mental disease or defect is not the end of the inquiry when it comes to guilt or innocence. It is whether a person can appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of the conduct and conform their conduct to the law. Do they know what they were doing, and can they control their actions? The evidence in this case will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant coldly and efficiently executed first Dawson, then Cora, and finally Callan. One by one, she strangled the life out of each one of them. She did so with no hesitation, with deliberate premeditation, and extreme atrocity and cruelty. She is criminally responsible for the murders because the evidence will prove to you that she knew exactly what she was doing. She drew her husband out of the house, their father, so that she had the opportunity and the time to carry out these murders. She maintained the ability to control her conduct, conform her conduct, when she attempted to kill herself to escape the consequences. At the conclusion of this case, we're going to come back and we're going to ask that you return guilty of the murders of Cora Clancy, Dawson Clancy, and Callan Clancy because the defendant committed those crimes.
Okay, well, you're not talking about the burden of proof on the defense. I guess if she's going to wait until the closing to say this is something that I didn't bring out earlier because the defense hadn't raised it yet, but I think that's something you can anticipate what the defense is going to be, because they're not going to sit there and say nothing. So in any event, not a very good opening for the prosecution. Didn't really have a lot of passion and gusto to it. And it was just sort of rattled off in a non-convincing way. I see some of y'all here from Massachusetts. So this is Jen McCabe's lawyer here, Reddington. He's also represented some other folks that were in serious trouble, serious accusations and charges. Some got acquitted and some he cut deals on, and some were convicted.
All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Reddington, do you wish to give an opening?
I do.
He asked him if he wishes to give an opening because he could have waived deferred the opening or completely waived it. Most attorneys are normally not going to defer the opening. It's really extremely rare to ever completely waive an opening, but let's see what he does here.
Your Honor, I might use the easel, may it be placed in front of the TV screen so that the jurors are able to? Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. She has two nurses behind her, I understand. I don't know if we'll get to see them.
You know, normally, we thank jurors for time away from your life, your jobs, your family, coming to court.
I just think an opening talking about thanking the jurors and all that kind of stuff, it's just bad maneuver. You want to jump right to the facts. This is a case about, and then you talk about it. This is a case about drugs pushing somebody beyond the brink, or something like that, and have some passion. But
Listening to a trial certainly is a service that's provided by you as citizens, but in this case, God bless you. You people are going to have to listen to some of the most horrific things. Look at some of the most horrific things. And jurors, it's a beautiful system. You pass between, as you heard Don Clerk say, you probably don't remember it, but it's old language, goes back to Old England. It says that you as jurors pass between the government.
yeah, this whole thing about the system and all that, you're starting off really flat here. This is a senior attorney who's done so many trials, has so much experience, and he's somebody that the jury's going to listen to and want to hear what he has to say. And so starting off not getting the facts, I think, is not the best advocacy.
Then. And she places herself on her country, which country you are. You owe allegiance to nothing but your oath, your consideration, and your time, your common sense. You bring your life experience to this trial. You render a verdict. And as jurors, It is. Take the job very, very, very seriously. You people will never forget this case. And thank you for that service.
Yeah, that's just weird talking about thanking them for their service and their responsibilities, and who their allegiances are to. Just not used to seeing that to start off. Do you have a good case or not? That's normally what you do if you don't believe in your case, I think. If you're going to be the type of attorney to do it that way. But yeah, he's not reading from a script either, so he's looking down, but all what he said so far wasn't from a script.
Government says that this is a situation, it's not a referendum on women's having babies and having postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression, but it sure as hell is. Because you're going to hear, consistent with what His Honor told you in the instructions, consistent with the obligation that the government has when they brought this charge. Tim Cruz, the DA, right in the front row, brought this charge. He knew, as did his office, the facts of this case. And he knew when he brought this charge that it was going to kill the soul of this young woman. And they would bring their evidence in front of a jury that she knows that she killed these children. We'll sit here, listen to their evidence. But I suggest
that's really like something that a lot of judges will just cut you off. You're going to start ripping into the DA who's sitting there. I would say if I was on a case and the DA of not an assistant DA, but the DA was there watching the case, observing, I'd probably object to him being there and say that he was trying to send a message to the jury that they need to convict, and it just looks bad. And so, but sit there and point him out and sort of accuse him of trying to crush and destroy the soul of the defendant over there. I've never seen that before. It's anyway, trying to make him look like the big bad government out to take advantage of poor, crippled, disabled, paralyzed moms. That anyway.
You that the issue, the consideration is what was going on in that woman's mind. You're going to hear evidence that, as the government said, Lindsay was a kind of a parent pleaser. She was a person that in school had a lot of friends, still has friends. You'll hear evidence to this day from the 6th grade. High school, college, nursing school. You're going to hear evidence that Lindsay, in the course of being in high school, she was a high achiever, gymnastics. Stopped doing gymnastics because she hurt herself and didn't like to do the backflips and stopped doing gymnastics, but she was very athletic. You're going to hear evidence that right after she had the birth, the last child, within 4 or 5 days, she ran a 5K. She was very, very, very physically fit. Her life was such that she watched what she ate, watched what she did in her life as far as activities.
So she's very disciplined, and a lot of people, they don't have enough discipline. So her to have that kind of discipline, it's commendable, especially I got to raise 3 kids and you're also working a job. So it's she probably does have to control a lot to try to keep stuff in line and being a mother and all that. So prosecution is trying to make it look like a bad thing, and that she not having control was turned to be selfish and cruel and just nothing but a monster.
One heck of a mother. She loved her children. All the things that the DA said to you about those little kids and their life and what they like, she knows 1,000 times more than what they know. And in that capacity, as a mother, daily you'll see evidence that she would decorate rooms, that she and Patrick did have that achievement of a wonderful life. They had it all. They met in Boston. She was a young nurse out of school. He was working in his industry. They ended up falling in love. They got married, bought a nice house. And, you know, people will say, oh, they're living in this mansion. No, they're living in a very, very humble house in Duxbury that they had to struggle to pay for. That house you will see, not from the view, because it's not enough that we have photographs. On top of the photographs, we have to have a video. And on top of the photographs and the video, we have to have an auto-computerized animated display. And on top of the photographs, the video, the animated display, we have to get on a bus and go take a ride and look at the house where some guy and his wife are now living, that it doesn't look at all like what it looked like when Lindsay and Patrick were living there with their 3 kids. But there are videos that show what that home looked like that day, prior to that. You'll see in every room, there are things hanging on the walls, alphabets, colors, numbers, pictures of different cartoon characters, and I'm too old to even remember what they are. Movies, all sorts of toys, erector sets, trucks, all over the living room. There was no dining room. It was a large thing for the baby to be in, and then surrounded by toys. Every single room had toys in it. These children were loved and nurtured and cared for by her. She didn't want to get rid of her kids because of her selfish life, as the government indicates. She
All right, he's making some good points here.
loved those children right up to the time of their death. You're going to see that.
When he said this, I was thinking right up to the time of the death, and then you didn't love him after that. That's the one thing that stuck out in my mind. It's like, I don't think he meant it that way, and I don't think that would be the case.
There's photographs in this case that you will be able to evaluate that show that. Some of them might even be in the videos that the state police took. This case is a massive production by the district attorney's office. You have the district attorneys, the assistant district attorneys, the assistants to the assistant district attorneys. You have the state police crime laboratory. You have the detectives. You have the state police, the armed men that will go out and interview witnesses and will investigate this case. You have the victim witness advocate, very nice lady, by the way, that deals with witnesses and people in a case such as this. It's a massive operation, and that's great. We should have that. But when you're considering the evidence, you consider the fact that you have 2 young people that were living this life, that were working, and Patrick, not because of COVID, not because of he just didn't want to work in an office anymore. He worked out of his basement. He worked in an office in the basement. He was there because of what Lindsay was going through. He was there. He lived it. And he will testify to it. He doesn't have to testify, quite frankly, and identify clothing and be distraught and placed in a position of horror in this courtroom. But he will testify to what they went through as a husband and a wife, the wife being pregnant. They had 3 kids. After the second child, she had postpartum. You're going to hear evidence that that's one of the issues that is important because that can lead to bipolar. One of the things that you don't do, which is taboo, is if you have somebody that's bipolar, you don't put them on an antidepressant, you don't put them on Zoloft, you don't put them on what's called an SSRI. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It messes with your brain. You don't do that, but it was done in this case. The reason that Lindsay went to the doctors was in September 2022. July and August of 2022, they were very happy. Lovely little family. September, things went sideways. And she looked. Well, and you heard the government saying, and remember what they say in their opening, and remember that when they prepare a case, and remember how they can point at different aspects of a case that show guilt, that show that somebody's conniving. In this case, how many times We heard she faked the suicide. Faked the suicide. Little cuts, dinky little cuts, scratches, you'll hear, stated in the opening statement or time of the arraignment, that she asked for a lawyer. That's rich. You're going to hear evidence that she was in her bedroom after the horrific act in the basement, and that she was up in the bedroom, that she stood in front of a full-length mirror, that she took the knife that was in the kitchen that she had taken. And when she took the knife, she cut her throat in front of the mirror. This is no fake suicide. This is her when she was brought to the hospital. When she was in the hospital. That's what her appearance was at the South Shore Hospital. When she's at the South Shore Hospital, she had wonderful care and treatment that was able, against her will, to save her life. Fake suicide, little scratches, dinky little scratches. This is a photograph that was taken at the South Shore Hospital of her neck. Photograph taken of her wrist, showing the split in the skin. Photograph showing you'll see evidence of this, the bedroom floor next to the bed with the blood.
Ex-husband now,
The knife
but he's supporting her.
next to the cup. Sadly, a gift saying, "Because kids." You see the white residue inside the cup? That's where the pills were crushed up with leftover lemonade from the night before when she consumed that.
This is really good rebuttal to the prosecution, making it sound like this was just a selfish act and faking it, and it was just a way to draw sympathy or whatever they're trying to say for cold-blooded murder of the children.
It's a knife. This here you'll see is sleep aids. See this here, deep sleep pillow spray. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't sleep for months. More photographs of the injuries to her neck. And then, in the course of the fake suicide speculation by the police, you'll see the evidence that she hung on the window ledge and, like Spider-Man, I guess, slid down the wall of the house. You're going to hear evidence that she flung and threw herself out the window, striking her head on the ground.
What did you say? He's talking about climbing out the window like Spider-Man, and then he's talking about flinging yourself out the window. Those are two separate things. So
You'll see the evidence that she hung on the window ledge and, like Spider-Man, I guess, slid down the wall of the house. You're going to hear evidence that she flung and threw herself out the window, striking her head on the ground, full ground, causing what's known as a Jefferson fracture of her neck. She shattered, exploded her thoracic spine, shattered her cervical spine, the first disc, broke every rib. And the Jefferson fracture, you'll hear evidence, is not consistent with a fake suicide by any means. Jefferson fracture is consistent with Superman when he got thrown off the horse. It's consistent with people that have the tragedy where they dive into a swimming pool, as a result of which they get that fracture in their neck and they're paralyzed. She's paralyzed. She's not going to get up miraculously and walk out of this courtroom. She's paralyzed and will be paralyzed for the rest of her life. She's living her own hell. She knows what happened with those kids. and she wanted to die. When she was in the hospital, you're going to see evidence. Brigham and Women's Hospital, when they transferred her from South Shore Hospital, air flight, into Brigham and Women's Hospital, and she was then given the emergency room with the emergency treatment at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. You couldn't move in that room. There was so much equipment, so many wires, so many breathing tubes, so many machines, humming, banging, clicking, and she's spread out like she's crucified on the bed while she's being treated in that room, surrounded by armed police officers. Out in the hallway, guarding the hallway against what? Anyone could guess. Guarding the hallway, guarding the room, guarding the bed, standing there. She's handcuffed to the bed. She goes to South Shore Hospital. Government speculates that, again, you see how the government is able to create what they want for facts, that she is so cold and calculating that she said that she heard voices after I brought a psychologist, Dr. Zeisel, into that room to see her. I had to move heaven and earth. You'll hear evidence that they wouldn't even let her have visitors. She couldn't even see her family for over a week. The cops wouldn't let anybody near her. That room was an armed camp. I had to move heaven and earth and practically get a court order to be able to get in there and see her while she's laying in the bed. And they suggest and will suggest that she said, I heard voices, I heard command hallucinations telling me to kill the kids and then kill myself, after she talked to Paul Zeisel as if he was telling her what to say because I'm the lawyer and I brought him into that hospital. You're going to hear evidence that Paul Zeisel is one of the most respected psychologists. You're going to hear evidence that he was embedded with the military in Afghanistan for years. You're going to hear evidence that he works for the government when there's a shooting involving the FBI, the CIA, or any of those alphabet soup cops. He's involved out interviewing these people for post-traumatic stress. I knew that he was the man to talk to this young woman in the hospital. When I finally was able to get into that room, into that hospital, he was with me. He did not tell her command voices. He, as a human being, gave her a cell phone so she could call Patrick. But you know what? You're going to hear evidence from a woman who works at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I saw Lindsay as soon as she came out of her coma. She is a woman that works with the religious services in that hospital. And the first thing that Lindsay wanted to know is, where's my family? And then she told her about what happened and told her about the command voices. And this is well before she ever met me or Paul Zeisel. So you have to keep focused on the evidence because it's so easy to manipulate. There's no fake suicide. And there was no plan to fake her sickness. This is a young woman that, with her husband, tried very hard to get the help she needed. She went and saw a doctor by the name of, oh, by the way, remember in the opening, the government says she shopped around for doctors, I guess, that she wanted to get doctors to, I don't know, give her drugs or something. You can hear evidence that she went online and she looked for someone that was into neonatal or post-baby delivery because she knew that she was in trouble. She couldn't sleep. She had insomnia. It wasn't just, you know, when you get up in the middle of the night because your phone's on. She couldn't sleep. She could only get 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night if she's lucky, as time went on. In September, she went to see Dr. Tufts. Jennifer Tufts is the name of the doctor. Jennifer Tufts then gave her a prescription for Zoloft, which is an antidepressant. It's one of those SSRIs. She didn't take the Zoloft for a couple of weeks because she was breastfeeding. She was afraid to have the baby have anything to do with drugs, but ultimately couldn't do it any longer, took the Zoloft and was spun out of control. Oh, because you didn't hear evidence because she was bipolar. You don't give a bipolar person Zoloft, but she got it. You're going to see what the effect was that it had on her as that week went on, as that month drove on, and she couldn't sleep, and she was unable to emote, had no emotions, had no feelings, was unable to really react to anything, but had to take care of the kids. And as the government says, well, she was able to talk to people. She was able to talk to neighbors. Sure, you're going to hear because they don't call them. We're going to call them. People that knew Lindsay as a mother, people that knew Lindsay, teachers of those kids will indicate what kind of a mother she was, as will neighbors, as will friends, as will people that saw her during that period of time. You're going to hear evidence from Patrick as to the effect that this sickness had on her. She was looking into it. You're going to see her Google searches. You're going to see her Google searches go on and on and on about how to take care of postpartum. What type of drugs? Can you become addicted to benzodiazepines? What about, is it possible to have a treatment, a ketamine treatment? What do I do as far as insomnia? What do I do about my thoughts to kill myself? Ways to kill. How do you kill? What do you do to kill? Government lashes onto that. Oh my God, she's looking up ways to kill. Let's make that a basis of our prosecution on this case. This is not a righteous prosecution. They're looking for every single piece of evidence that they can to show some ridiculous concept that she wanted to kill her beautiful kids because she didn't want to be a mother anymore. This is a woman that was a nurse. She worked for one of the best hospitals in the country. She was in a labor delivery. You're going to hear from labor and delivery nurses that will tell you how dedicated she was. Cora was named after the very, very first baby that she delivered as a nurse in the hospital. That's where the name Cora came from. Cora was named after her first delivery. This is a woman who did nothing in her life but dedicate her life to helping people and be a good person and a good nurse and a great mother. And as time went on, looking like anyone else would, please help me. That's what it's all about. Give me help. And the government will say, God, she was able to talk to people. She wasn't drooling. She wasn't putting tin foil inside of a hat when she was going to the schools. No, she was able to talk to people. We actually have, we meaning the government, we have video of her and Patrick and the kids at the Museum of Science. And they were actually having a good time. We also have video that shows them down at the Cape Cod, down the Cape, with the kids, and they're in bathing suits. I guess she was fine. She put on a pretty good face. So what does she do? She goes to see, September 12th of 22, she looked for a psychiatrist. That's when she hooks up, if you will, with Dr. Jennifer Tufts, early October of 22, initial appointment. October 20th of 22, reports the adverse reaction that she was having to the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor Zoloft. November 16th, she goes to the South Shore Hospital emergency room because she was so depressed and so maxed out from lack of sleep and so unable to emote. She couldn't laugh, she couldn't cry, she couldn't have any feeling. She was a robot. She went to South Shore Hospital. She was referred and engaged with South Shore Perinatal Behavioral Health. This was Patrick's mother. This is Patrick's mother, Mrs. Clancy, who's a nurse, well-respected nurse, wonderful woman. She works at the South Shore Hospital, labor and delivery as well. She knows Lindsay. And she told Lindsay, you got to go to this outfit here, which was the South Shore Perinatal Behavioral Health. She didn't look them up because she wanted to get drugs. She was referred by her mother-in-law, who's a nurse. She went to see these people, November 21st of 22. When she was engaged at the South Shore Perinatal Behavioral Health, she's going on one drug to the next to the next. The drugs that she was prescribed, you see here, and you'll hear evidence that, first off, Jennifer Tufts, September 15th, 22, sertraline, that's the Zoloft. Then lorazepam, October 21st, Jennifer Tufts. Then hydroxyzine, Jennifer Tufts. Lorapazan, Jennifer Tufts. Buspirone, Jennifer Tufts. Lorazepam, increase, Jennifer Tufts. Buspirone, increase from 1 milligram to 5 milligrams, Jennifer Tufts. Trazodone from another individual, fluoxetine, 10 milligrams from another person named Julie Paul.
Doesn't it just sound nuts that somebody could be given this much of a variety of meds?
Julie Paul worked at the South Shore Hospital when she went there to go to try to get some help from South Shore Perinatal Behavioral Health. More medications, spiraling, continuing on, down. Pat lived this, and he will testify to what they went through. At this point, at the end of November, around Thanksgiving, she's reporting disassociation and confusion. They put her on Remeron. This is around Thanksgiving. Things were so bad at this point that her mother and father came up from Connecticut and lived with them to take care of the kids, to help, because she was walking around absolutely a zombie. She would rock on the sofa, crying hysterically, banging her head into the pillow of the sofa. Patrick will tell you what he observed with her. She dealt with her parents. Her parents were there to try to help. Is this someone that's faking because she doesn't want to be a mother anymore? The parents were there. Mother and father, wonderful people. Mother's retired. Dad took pictures of high school kids for yearbooks. They did what they could. Coming into December, after Thanksgiving, and they went, by the way, during the holidays, down to Connecticut at one point to visit with the family. But December 4th, she calls a suicide hotline seeking help. December 5th, she's evaluated by what's known as the Aspire Crisis Team. You'll hear evidence about that. December 6th, the next day, they have an appointment with Nurse Jawada. Now, Nurse Jawada comes into this action because, again, not looking for more doctors. Paul retired or left or went to another job. So all of a sudden, Nurse Paul, who was treating her and prescribing meds, leaves. Here's Nurse Jawada. She's now going to be your person you deal with. That's all. She wasn't looking for some other doctors to get additional medication. She now is dealing with Jawada. They have an appointment with Nurse Jawada. And Pat goes with her because he was so upset and says to Jawada, you'll hear evidence. Do you think possibly that she's over-medicated? Do you think somebody screwed up? And she says, it's possible. And then she puts her on more medication. She puts her on, okay, December of 2022, you're going to see that Nurse Jawada, who is now on this chart, is in blue. Nurse Jawada puts her on creatine, 25 milligrams, November 30th. December 6th, diazepam, 5. December 7th, diazepam. December 7th, creatine. December 9th, diazepam, 5. December 13th, diazepam. And then she goes back to Jennifer Tufts because they just couldn't handle dealing with Rebecca Jawada because she wanted to wean off the drugs. Jawada told her to stay the course. She ends up going through the December 19th, 21st, 22nd, dealing with creatine, 300 milligrams of creatine. Now, what happens is they then suggest that what she has to do is go to Mass General Hospital. She goes to Mass General Hospital. At Mass General, they say, well, you can do like a day program, or you can go to this fantastic program down in Rhode Island called Women and Infants Program. So she goes to Women and Infants Program. She goes down for a day. She sits there in a group with other mothers and they talk. And they look at her medication and they say, you're going to see it in the medical records. We can't really help you as postpartum, and that's what they specialize in, because you've got medications that you're going to have to clear because the medications can be affecting you. She was there for a day, one day. They never said anything. You're not suffering from postpartum. Postpartum, every one of these doctors and nurses knew that she was suffering from postpartum. And now it's turning into psychosis. Now as she goes through the period of time, in January 5, Aliyah Goodhart from McLean Hospital puts on trazodone, 50 milligrams, lorazepam, 1 milligram, leaving the hospital. She goes to that hospital on New Year's Eve. She and Patrick decide this is it. The two of them get in their car. Family takes care of the kids. She goes to the hospital. Now it's locked wards. She goes into the hospital. She's there for 4 days. During that period of time that she's there, she's in group. She doesn't see a doctor but once. There's no discussion of medications till the very end. You'll see the medical records. You can look at the medical records. You'll see that her daughter's birthday was coming up and she wanted to leave rather than the 5th on the 4th. This is not a discharge against medical advice. They cleared her. They said, yeah, fine, you're okay, good luck, go home. She went home and she went to the birthday party. The government will have witnesses apparently to show that she was able to socialize, like, hi, how are you, at the trampoline where they had the birthday party for Cora. She's still living in a nightmare. During this period of time, January 9th, back to Jennifer Tufts, puts her on diazepam. Jennifer Tufts kicks up the trazodone to 150 milligrams. January 13th, you've got Rebecca Jawada, puts her on diazepam. And by the way, when she was down at Rhode Island in the nurse and babies hospital, not a hospital, it was like a service, the people that were treating her for that one day reached out to Jawada to find out what's up with the medication, and Jawada never called them back. You're going to hear evidence, and it's in the medical records, that when she and Patrick called Jawada to say, I got to wean off this. She didn't want more drugs. She wanted off the drugs. Jawada says, stay the course. She's going on vacation. I'll see you in a week. Comes back in a week. You're going to see that now Jennifer Tufts puts her on diazepam 2 milligrams on January 16th. Amitriptyline 10 milligrams, January 16th. Diazepam and diazepam between Tufts and Jawada. And the last script is diazepam 2 milligrams, January 23rd. During that period of time, you can see that on December 20th and 22nd, she was evaluated at the Women's and Infants Partial Hospitalization Program in Rhode Island. December 30th, she returned to Mass General Hospital emergency room. December 31st, that's after Mass General told her to go to the hospital, you can go to McLean. New Year's Eve, December 20th of 22, they were admitted to McLean Hospital for psychiatric treatment. January 6th of 23 was post-discharge follow-up appointment with Dr. Tufts. January 10, 16, and 23, appointment of Dr. Tufts, Dr. Tufts, Dr. Tufts. Day before the killings, Dr. Tufts. These are the medications that she was on, that she had filled, that she took, that she didn't take, and apparently, according to the opening statement by the government, was manipulating the doctors, not telling the doctors. She told them that she was suicidal. She told them that she had suicidal ideation, and in December, to his and her ever dying regret, told Patrick in the presence of her mother that she was having psychosis thoughts of hurting the children. This is a woman that did not get the medication, did not get the medical treatment that she so deserved. This is a woman that was suffering from psychosis at the time that she went down to that basement. She had no motive. She loved her children. She intended to kill herself. She didn't fake that. Threw herself out the window. Goes to the hospital. You're going to see that when she's in the hospital, they said to her, you want to, what do you call it, a DNR? Do not resuscitate or whatever. Absolutely. Did not want any DNR. Didn't want to be resuscitated, wanted to die. To this day wants to die. That's what we're dealing with on this prosecution. So you're going to hear from witnesses. It's going to be emotional. And thank you for your service. Thank you, Judge.
All right. So he had a pretty strong opening, more of an argument to counter the opening statement of the prosecution. He had more of an argument, but she sort of invited that argument, the prosecutor did. So I would say this is, going to come down to the mental status, the mental state of mind of Lindsay, and was she having some kind of psychosis? Was it from the postpartum? There is such a thing as postpartum psychosis. Are we going to hear experts from that? The defense didn't really lay out a lot of what the experts were going to describe her as being, and the fact that she wasn't that she had whatever diagnosis it was. So we're not hearing any of that. And so I was a little bit surprised to see that. But he also showed a lot of the meds that she was prescribed. He did not talk about how much of them she was taking, but as a comment from a mental health practitioner said, not taking them on a regular basis can actually make it worse. So I want to show then, go to another part here. Let's go ahead and see some of what Patrick testified to today.
And so looking in Exhibit 2, we have the Zoloft that was prescribed by Dr. Tufts and filled on September 15th, 2022. And I think I asked you earlier, you weren't aware that only 7 pills were taken out of this, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then there's another prescription in here for Ativan that was filled on October 26, 2022. Were you aware that only 6 pills were taken out of that bottle?
Can you say the date again?
October 26, 2022.
So she's already bipolar. We're hearing that she's got bipolar as a mental disease. Then she's also got postpartum depression and possibly psychosis. And then you're mixing around different drugs. Just a couple pills could really push her off the deep end. And maybe that's why she's not taking them. So I think the prosecution is just trying to make it out like she's trying to manipulate the medical profession and trying to use these pills as a reason to make it look like she has a worse mental status than what she actually does. I'm just not seeing that come across as what her storyline is about, her defense. Elmore, yeah, it's going to be a battle of the experts. They're going to all be trying to say, the prosecution will be trying to say what was going on in her mind. The defense will try to say the opposite, that she really just went off the deep end, was not able to maintain control of her thought processes in their mind. So it's one of these things, though, that I would like you guys to put on some comments of things you've seen or known of people you know that have been on different psych meds and what's going on in their lives that was very bizarre and erratic and looked like they lost control of their mind. I mean, I can think of one right now where somebody was a few years ago put on some psych meds when they're in the hospital, came out of the hospital and started doing things like doing really bizarre stuff like urinating in open public at stores. Stores. I mean, really bizarre stuff like that. And it just became like a zombie, like they're talking about, like what Lindsay became. Within days of being off the meds that were given only a few weeks, then that behavior completely stopped and they became their normal selves again. I can think of another situation. Somebody I know was given a benzodiazepine, something like Xanax, I believe it was. This is maybe a dozen years ago, and was 5 hours away from home, and in the middle of the night decided to leave the spouse behind and just took off in a car because they thought that they were such a horrible person because they knocked a plant over in the middle of the night going to the bathroom at this house they're staying at. And so left the spouse behind and had no idea that it was something that was extremely dangerous, leaving your spouse behind and thinking that you're such a horrible person for not going to plan over. I mean, just really bizarre, erratic thinking in both these situations. I know somebody was on Valium, which they described here as diazepam. That's Valium, one of the names for it. And after being on diazepam, Valium a couple months, they think that they need to die and end their life, and that they're a terrible mother and their kids are better off without her. So it's just really these kind of drugs. There's no telling what kind of depravity that can trigger in their minds. It's something that is really not fully understood in society as much. So these doctors here that are going to be testifying will be trying to elaborate on this. And the thing is, they don't know for sure because there's no actual test you can run to show what's going on in somebody's mind, right? You can do an MRI, you can do a CT scan. All that imagery is not going to really show how the brain is functioning or not. Are they in a psychosis state? And I think that we have, because we don't have there's no blood test to show this person is going into psychosis now. And so a lot of it's just opinions of doctors. And, we heard back in the 70s that, you just need to get on these psych meds because it's you have a chemical disorder in your brain. So, it's the chemical disorder was the thing that was pushed by big pharma to be able to make the people feel like, oh, hey, I can fix the chemical imbalance. This is like morally responsible and healthy for me to do this, take these pills. But anyway, if you just notice all the folks doing the school shootings, they're all on different meds as well. And you know what? I'm curious to see. She's on some of these different meds. I believe that I heard that like 4 or 5 were in her blood still. And so they may not have an active life of you feel them in your system so much after a couple days, but it's still in your blood system. And if you have different interactions with these, think about it. These drugs have never been tested for what she was taking. No one's ever taken these kind of drugs in her situation, her mental status, or bipolar or postpartum. These have never been tested with somebody with her situations going on. And in fact, they never could test it for that, right? Because each of us respond differently to these mind-altering medications. So, yeah, that's why I think, it's going to be interesting. I can't see them getting a conviction on this from what I've heard so far in the openings. So maybe they're going to say that, well, she was prescribed all these, but she didn't really take any of these. If that comes out, then maybe not so much. It's going to be the medicine that was the but-for factor. But I think you definitely have the postpartum. So we'll cover that more here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and continue.
And how many did it start with?
Let's see. Okay. 30 pills.
Okay. I mean, I don't have those exact numbers on how many she took, but there were adjustments made on the dosage of the Ativan.
Mm-hmm.
So that aligns with
But the question was, were you aware that only 6 pills were taken out of this prescription?
No, but I think the context is important.
Okay. Were you aware that there was a prescription?
I mean, in one way, I would argue it as if I was defense counsel, is that this is how bad she was, that these meds weren't doing any good. She took 7 of them and they weren't doing any good. They're making her worse. So that'd make this psychosis even go off more on the deep end.
And for buspirone or Buspar filled on October 26, 2022, in which only 2 pills were taken out of the 30 that were prescribed.
I found out about the Buspar later, and I didn't know about the number of pills taken.
And then were you aware that there was a prescription for hydroxyzine, prescription filled on October 26, 2022, For 30 pills, and that only 3 pills were taken out of this bottle.
Which
Hydroxyzine.
Yeah, what is that?
I believe it's in some type of, similar to an antihistamine, like Benadryl or something like that.
Oh, okay. I don't really recall much about that drug.
Okay. And were you aware in this bag there was another prescription for Buspar that was filled on November 9th, 2022, 30 pills prescribed, and no pills were taken out of this bottle. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't keeping track of the number of pills taken out of each bottle.
Okay.
So
And then just ask you about one more.
I was sort of surprised to hear this, that he was not keeping track. I mean, if these things aren't working, you think you'd be fully helping your wife manage what's going on. And he's there in the house. He's pretty much working from the house, I understand it. So that's something I was surprised to see.
The trazodone prescribed on November 16th, 2022 by a doctor from South Shore Hospital, 30 pills. Were you aware that only 7.5 pills were taken out of this prescription?
no.
So there were a lot of pills prescribed, but not a lot of pills taken, correct?
Is that comprehensive of all the pills that were prescribed?
These are the pills that you brought into the police station. So out of these,
Out of those, yeah, it's possible that not a lot were taken.
But he doesn't really know. So it's just a possibility. And are these any of these on refill? Did they bring that up at all?
do you recall what was the most amount of pills prescribed? I guess I could ask this better. What was the maximum number of medications she was on at any one time?
I want to say 3 or 4.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that she, at any given time, the most she was prescribed was 3, but most of the time it was 2 medications that she was prescribed at any given time?
It wouldn't be terribly surprising, no.
Now,
Like I say, I'll be surprised if the defense does not bring it out through their experts, and if the defense does not bring it out through cross, that these intermixing of dosages, these drugs are only tested by the manufacturers, and they're then given the reports then given to the FDA for somebody taking just that medicine. Intermixing the meds has never been a requirement for the FDA. So these doctors may say, well, yeah, I routinely give these out, but you know what? That's not testing. And if a 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 100,000 commits murder because of the mixing of pills, then that's a one too many.
on November 16th, 2022, did Lindsay visit South Shore Hospital?
Yes.
Okay. And why did she go to the South Shore Hospital that day?
I believe that day was because she basically went 48 hours without sleeping.
And was she having heart palpitations?
I think so, yeah.
Were you aware that she had taken a weed gummy that day?
I don't recall.
And are you aware that she didn't tell medical staff at the hospital when describing her symptoms and her medication that she left out that she had used marijuana?
I wasn't with her, so I don't know what she talked about at the hospital.
So she drove herself to the hospital?
She did.
And she drove herself home from the hospital then? Is that
Yeah.
correct? Now, during this time frame between
I didn't answer it. Well, so the prosecutor's saying she did drive herself home. That doesn't make him look that good.
September and November of 2022, Are you still participating in activities as a family
Between November and December?
between September and November?
Yeah.
Okay. And what types of things were you doing?
We celebrated Halloween. I don't really remember what else, but I think we were doing things regularly.
Do you recall going to an event with food trucks?
Yeah.
And do you recall going to an event in November where there were trains to ride with the kids?
Yeah.
So we have the photo from the food truck event, this is exhibit 3. And the photo from the train event is exhibit 4. 3 and 4 somewhere. Can they publish?
You may.
So exhibit 3 is this Lindsay, Cora, and Callan at that event.
Yeah.
And exhibit 4.
My read on him, I think he's probably in a state still of some kind of shock. I think this whole thing is like a nightmare in his mind, and I would think that there would be more emotion. But if you're so much in a state of shock and you have trouble grieving, then I can see you acting this way. And him not having more knowledge of what kind of medicine she was on. If you time that with her also saying she's thinking about harming the kids, that would, you'd think, be a cause for more drastic intervention. And like somebody said, maybe have the grandparents take the kids until she gets stabilized, and never leave her alone with the kids. I mean, that should have been a rule number 1. Yeah, I do think he's probably got PTSD as well, that he has to. I mean, there's no way he wouldn't.
Or just Lindsay with all 3 kids at that event in November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have plans for Thanksgiving that year?
Yeah.
What were your plans?
I believe the order was we went to Wallingford, where her parents lived, in the week before, and then the week after, we went to my sister's house.
And where did your sister live? What town?
South Hamilton.
And that was a week after Thanksgiving, is that right, correct?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it was.
And is this a photo from Thanksgiving at your sister's house?
Yes.
I could have this photo marked as exhibit 5, I believe.
All right, that may be marked.
Exhibit 5. Showing you what's been marked. Exhibit 5. Is this Lindsay here on the left?
Yes.
And are those your sisters in the photo with her?
That's one of my sisters and my sister-in-law.
Okay. And have they coordinated outfits for the day? The shirts?
Yeah, I think my sister did.
What was Lindsay's demeanor that day?
She was in rough shape.
Rough shape?
Yeah.
How so?
She wasn't talking much. She had low energy. She was really depressed. I just remember when she showed up, my sister-in-law gave her a big hug.
And she was able to get through dinner, eat dinner with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. She interacted with people, is that correct?
I would say very little, but to some degree, sure.
And she took care of the kids with you while she was there?
We both took care of the kids together.
You mentioned earlier that your wedding anniversary is in December. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you recall going out for your anniversary on December 3rd, 2022, going into Boston?
No, we didn't go out.
You don't recall arranging for a massage for Lindsay and then going to the Omni Parker house and going out to dinner that night?
No, December 3rd, 2022, we stayed home.
You stayed home, okay.
Says prosecutor had a chance to interview him ahead of time, so it looks like their prep work wasn't very good.
Showing you a photo of you and Lindsay. You recognize this photo?
All right.
Yeah.
When was that taken?
I'm not really sure.
It wasn't taken on December 3rd when you were out celebrating your anniversary?
In 2022?
Yes.
No.
Go.
No, we wanted to go out, but we canceled because she wasn't feeling well. So we stayed home. We got takeout.
Okay.
Okay. Where's she getting that wrong info? But he stood his ground. That was good.
Did you also, on November 26th, 2022, go out as a family to get a Christmas tree?
Yes. Well, probably. I don't know. But yeah, around that time, yes.
Okay. Showing you two photos. Are these from that day when you got the Christmas tree?
Yeah, that looks accurate.
You could have the first photo of all five. Six. And then the second one is Exhibit 7. Exhibit 7. Showing you Exhibit 6. This is all of you at the tree farm.
Yeah.
And Exhibit 7, those are the kids.
Yes.
Around December 6th, 2022, did Lindsay tell you she was starting a new medication?
I don't remember specifically.
Is it that you don't remember the date or you don't remember her starting a new medication?
I'm not sure.
Do you remember Lindsay telling you at some point she was starting the medication Seroquel?
Yes.
Do you remember around?
Okay, Seroquel, that's an antipsychotic. And that's something that I know in the military, you are not allowed to deploy if you're on a antipsychotic med like Seroquel. They don't trust you with a weapon. They know you can be a danger to yourself or others. So that's my experience with Seroquel. There was once a helicopter aviation mechanic in Germany, when I was stationed in Germany, they were trying to force him to deploy, and he had PTSD from a previous deployment in Afghanistan. And he just said, I can't make it. I feel like I'm going to die if I go there. And he was their best mechanic. They wanted him to go regardless. He was on Seroquel. So he was court-martialed, and that was the defense I used, that this was a non-deployable medication. It was something that was such a significant mind-altering type drug that he was not allowed to carry a weapon in a combat zone. So anyway, that's something that I ought to tell you. This kind of stuff can is not something to mess around with.
What time frame that was?
I thought it was before December 6th.
Okay. And do you recall how she was physically after starting the Seroquel?
Awful.
How so?
That was really where her big spiral started. She started to lose a lot of weight, and she became very depressed, and she was having a really hard time.
And did she describe to you some thoughts or feelings that she was having at that time?
Yeah, she started to say she was suicidal.
And was that in December of 2022?
I think so, yeah.
And when she told you she was suicidal, did you ask her if she had a plan on how to kill herself?
Yes.
And what was her response?
She said no.
And did she
That's also something folks can do if they plan on committing suicide through the psychosis and the bad medication. That can also be something that they're not going to tell somebody about, or it can be something that's spontaneous. So there's any number of things that can trigger someone to do this.
ever mention a specific way or plan she had to kill herself to you?
No.
And at some point in time, did she tell you that this was the first time she had suicidal thoughts?
I don't know if she mentioned it was the first time or not. I just remember her saying she had them.
Had you ever heard her say that to you before, that she was having suicidal thoughts?
No.
So he initially said he wasn't quite sure.
Did you own at that time a Surface Pro, a type of tablet that works as a laptop?
Yeah.
And who had access to that laptop?
We both did.
Okay. You and Lindsay?
Yeah.
And going back to August 22nd, 2022, did you click on a link on that Surface Pro that was titled Methods of Suicide?
Not that I recall.
And August 22nd, 2022, that was before Lindsay had been on any medications, as far as you know, correct?
Correct.
Going back to December, she's told you that she's having these thoughts. What's your reaction when she tells you that she's having these suicidal thoughts?
I just wanted to support her. I asked those questions back to her, and her mother was coming up pretty regularly anyways, so we let them know, and we just try to be supportive.
Did she also tell you at that time, at the beginning of December, that she was having some other intrusive thoughts?
Yeah.
Is that how she described them or how you described them, intrusive thoughts?
I would say both.
Okay. And when she told you that she was having intrusive thoughts, did you ask her what they were?
Yeah.
And what was her response?
She described thoughts of hurting the kids, or them having some sort of ailment. So like she was very worried that Cora whenever she had a stomach ache, she became overly worried that she was, had like a liver problem or something much more dramatic than it was.
Okay. But going back to that first part, she said she had thoughts of harming the kids. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And did she tell you whether or not she had specific thoughts of how she would harm the kids?
No.
And she didn't describe that as hearing this external voice telling her to harm the kids, correct?
Correct.
She told you she was having intrusive thoughts herself of harming the children, correct?
Correct.
And did you ask her how she was going to harm the kids?
I didn't ask it in that way. It was the same thing. I said, do you have a plan, and is it disturbing to you? And she said no, and then she said yes. And
let me go back for a minute there. You said, do you have a plan? And she said no. What was the second question? Second part of the question?
Do you find it disturbing?
Okay.
And she said yes. And she described it as...
Does this sound like somebody that's having these conscious decisions lucid, conscious decisions to want to kill her children? Or does it sound like somebody who's mentally breaking down in some kind of state of psychosis?
Really, the way she was describing it as something that might happen to the kids.
So it was more something might happen than she might do something. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And did she tell you how long she had those thoughts for?
She didn't give a duration.
And
But it seems like there's no follow-up after this. There should have been like an ongoing multiple times a day, at least once a day in the morning, afternoon, say, hey, how you doing? How's your, just roundabout way, trying to find out what's going on. How are you thinking? What's your frame of mind like?
how many times did she tell you this, that she had thoughts of harming the kids?
A couple times.
And was that a couple times over the course of a night or two in December?
Yeah.
And as a result of her telling you this, that she had thoughts of harming the kids, what did you do?
Her parents came up, and I think I asked her at some point, do you feel like you need to be kept away from them? And she said no. And then, it was very confusing because a minute later she was making them lunch or playing with them or, getting them ready for bed or whatever it was. So.
Yeah, so in defense of him and the family, her own family even, and his family, maybe they think, hey, it's a fleeting thought. It's something that came in her mind and it's not going to be preoccupying her mind and harming the kids. It's like, what do you mean by harm? That follow-up wasn't asked. Harm, I mean like killing our 3 children. That wasn't clarified.
So it was confusing in that she wasn't physically harming them at the time, but had these thoughts. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I never saw Lindsay harm the kids.
And did you also, as a result of these statements, suggest an appointment with nurse practitioner Gelada?
It wasn't as a result of these statements. That appointment was set up because we were at her parents' house in Wallingford for Thanksgiving. And she just described how she was feeling on the medication, and she felt that she was addicted to them.
Was that the benzodiazepines that she thought she was addicted to?
Primarily, and then she was taking Seroquel at the same time, and she might have been taking Trazodone or Remeron. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's like a scary cocktail there. Just one of those alone can turn you homicidal and incite murder. Your mind is telling you must do it. You must do it. You don't have any choice. So anyway, that's what I've seen in other cases.
Do you recall testifying previously that I called her parents to come up to stay with us, and I told her that I asked her who her doctor was because I was very concerned at this point. She was prescribed 10 different medications in just over 2 months, so it didn't make sense to me. And then you said, so after her parents came up, she said, I have a remote meeting with Rebecca Gelada, and you said, no, it has to be in person.
Yeah, I felt like it had to be in person because I just felt like there was a disconnect. I felt like we could figure it out, whatever was going on. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like most of her telehealth appointments were pretty quick, and there just wasn't like a lot of attention. And
were you present for these telehealth visits?
Only a few of them, okay. And they were after that meeting with Gelada.
Okay. And that appointment in person with Gelada was December 6th, 2022. Is that correct?
That sounds correct.
So the thought of harming the kids was after Thanksgiving, but before December 6th. Is that correct?
That sounds correct.
Were you concerned for the kids' safety at that time?
No, I wasn't.
And why not?
Because she wasn't showing any intention of harming the kids.
Because he knows she's not the type to do something like that. It's a thought. There's not a plan. You're not going to act on it. He's not thinking, oh my gosh, this could turn out where I got to be around her 24/7. I can't trust her around the kids. I mean, think about it. She could do this in the middle of the night. He could have been there in the house when this goes on. She could have taken these exercise bands and strangled the kids, and he finds out in the next morning when they wake up, all the kids are dead. So it's really puts a lot of pressure on somebody like him, and he's not thinking it's these drugs can do that or she's that bad off. So I have a lot of sympathy for him in this situation.
She told you she didn't have a plan, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, directing your attention to December 15th, 2022, did Lindsay go to Mass General Hospital to the emergency department that day?
Yeah.
Okay, and why was that?
Look at, we've been covering this now over 20 minutes. All this is all about psych meds usage. So the prosecutor said this, there's not a debate here about psych meds or however she said it, but this is really what they've been trying to present here through their first witness, is that there's a lot of issues swirling around about what meds she was on or not on. And we've not even heard what the side effects are on these kind of meds.
I remember the reasoning being she told her dad that she wanted to commit suicide, and then she said to me, I told my dad I want to die, and it didn't bother me at all.
And
That right there, I mean, a loving mother all of a sudden not even caring if her kids don't have a mom around. I mean, there's something psychotic with that. That's not a normal thinking mother that she'd been previously.
as a result of those statements, you brought her, or did she bring herself to Mass General?
I think I brought her that time.
And at Mass General, she saw medical staff, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And did they recommend to her some type of admission to McLean Hospital?
I remember there was one doctor who was in favor of that, and there were two others who were more in favor of a day program.
Okay. And did they give you information about a specific day program?
Yeah, it was women and infants in Providence.
And at that time, when Lindsay was saying that she was suicidal, was she asked if she had a plan?
By the doctors.
Or by you?
I was always checking in with her, and she never told me that she had a plan. I'm not sure what the doctors asked her.
Okay. And after being at Mass General on December 15th, did she go to Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island to attempt to get into their postpartum program?
She's still trying to get help, folks. This is a big deal. I think this is really helpful for the defense.
She was already in. She went in as scheduled.
Okay. And but she didn't remain in, correct? She was just there for a day?
Correct.
Okay. And did she go by herself? Did you go with her?
I dropped her off, and then I took Dawson skiing.
Okay. And at some point in time, did Lindsay reach out to you to say she wasn't staying at the program and to come pick her up?
She actually said that the providers at that program suggested to her that she call me and have her come get picked up, and then that I should go in and meet with the providers.
Okay. And then after you picked her up, she was no longer in the program at that point, correct? At Rhode Island Women and Children's, right?
Well, we discussed it with the doctors, and their recommendation was that the program wasn't right for her.
Right. And so you guys returned home, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And during this time frame, in December, Lindsay's still working out at the Kingsbury Club, correct?
That might be true. I don't recall exactly, but yeah.
Okay. Do you recall her going to the Kingsbury Club on December 6th, 13th, 16th, 17th, or 18th?
I mean, I believe that can be true. Yeah, I don't recall those exact dates, but yeah.
At this time when she's saying that she's feeling suicidal, she's telling you she doesn't have a plan, correct?
Mhm.
She's no longer saying she has any thoughts of harming the children, correct?
Correct.
She's still bringing the children to doctor's appointments during that time, right?
Yeah.
Do you recall her bringing Callan and Dawson to the doctors on December 2nd when they weren't feeling well?
Yeah.
And then she was able to call the doctor's office on December 27th and make an appointment for Callan and Cora when they weren't feeling well. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And take them to the doctor, I believe with you, correct?
Maybe I don't know.
And then on December 30th, she was able to take Callan to the doctor that day as well and interact with the staff. Is that correct?
Probably.
Then you returned to Mass General Hospital, the emergency department, on December 31st. Is that correct?
Yes.
And why did you go back on the 31st?
Because she was still talking about thoughts of suicide, and I was exhausted. I said, I think it's time to go to McLean, and we didn't have a diagnosis, so we just didn't really know what was wrong. And I think for me, I was hoping that McLean could really evaluate her and try to figure out the best.
With all this going on, there's no diagnosis, and they're just throwing out all these different meds. Well, let's try this. Let's throw this against the wall. Have her try another thing, and all these different medications can cause extreme violence and delusional thoughts.
Path forward.
Okay, so the path to getting to McLean
All these, I'm not talking about the ones that are like an antihistamine or something like that. I'm talking about these psych meds.
was to go to the emergency department at Mass General and be referred to McLean. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you aware that night while at the hospital, Lindsay was taking selfies?
No.
Or too soon at these people?
True.
Right, that may be admitted, or they may be admitted.
Can you exhibit me taking a selfie at the hospital? Is that correct?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And then the second page is just her legs in the doorway. Is that correct?
Yep.
Hmm.
As a result of going
If that's true, Astara, that she was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, that doesn't explain her wanting to kill herself and harm the children. So I can understand his frustration.
to Mass General and telling them about her suicidal thoughts, was she transferred to McLean Hospital?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you stay with her throughout that transfer process, or were you able to?
I was not able to. For some reason, they transfer. I don't know if they do this with all patients, but she was transferred at 3 a.m.
Okay. And so she reached McLean in the early morning hours of January 1st then of 2023. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you visit her at McLean Hospital?
Yeah.
How often did you see her there?
I think I was able to go twice, or maybe 3 times.
Okay. And do you remember, what visiting hours were or what hours you visited?
I don't remember exactly, but it was, something like 2 to 6. And I think there were morning hours, but you couldn't just go anytime.
You couldn't or could?
You could not.
Okay. And so you, out of the few days that she was there, 5 days she was there, you visited 2 or 3 times. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And while you were there with her, did Lindsay talk to you about the treatment that she was receiving at McLean Hospital?
She told me about her experience. It didn't really seem like she was getting any treatment.
Okay. Did she tell you that she wasn't really getting any treatment or wasn't getting as much care or treatment as she wanted?
Well, I think by the 3rd day, I said, what have the doctors said? And she said, I haven't met with the doctor. The challenge was she arrived on a Saturday, and then I think Monday was an observed holiday, so she didn't see a doctor until Tuesday. So until then, she was coloring and playing with clay and going for walks.
Were you aware that she was seen by a resident, a doctor, the first 2 days she was there, and then an attending on the 3rd day that she was there?
No.
Were you aware that she was seen by a licensed social worker, group therapist, and other mental health workers every day while she was there?
Yeah, I didn't get any updates.
Okay. Were you aware that she was offered one-on-one therapy by unit staff every day that she was there?
No.
Did you know that she participated in group therapy on January 1st for 45 minutes, a session about illness and symptom management?
I was aware of some group activities. I didn't know the details of it.
And were you aware that she participated in 2 group therapy sessions, one for 45 minutes and one for 50 minutes, one on self-compassion and one on illness and symptom management on January 3rd?
Sounds like she's got a lot of stuff messed up in her head, doesn't it?
I wasn't aware of the subject of.
She's really struggling, doesn't want this. Do you think she enjoyed this? Going through all this, thinking about wanting to kill herself, kill the kid. This is not a normal thinking person here. So what's the cause of it? Is she just generally an evil, mean monster? Or she got some serious mental issues going on?
Any of the meetings now.
Were you aware that she declined further group therapy and treatment in the afternoon of January 3rd?
No.
Were you aware that on January 4th, she participated in a group for 40 minutes called medication management?
No.
Were you aware that she participated in a group on January 5th on expressive therapy for 45 minutes?
No.
And were you aware that she declined further treatment 2 times on January 5th, one to attend group therapy and one to attend a session on cognitive behavioral processes?
No.
Were you aware that Lindsay asked the doctors to be discharged on the 6th, Friday the 6th, because she wanted to go to Cora's birthday party on the 7th?
Not that I recall.
Okay, so she's thinking about not missing out on her kid's birthday. I mean, this doesn't sound like someone that hates their kids and wants them dead, does it?
Were you aware, or did Lindsay tell you that she then asked the doctors to discharge her on January 5th because she wanted to go home and get ready for the party?
I wasn't aware of Lindsay asking the doctors to be discharged.
Okay. Were there any insurance issues in terms of insurance refusing to pay for her stay at McLean Hospital?
Right, Cheryl, you agree that she has serious mental issues worthy of thing, but she also demonstrated clear thinking when she planned the killings carefully. Well, that's what I think you need to understand, is that psychotic people can have very specific, detailed, calculating, very shrewd plans to be able to effectuate their path of destruction. So that to me is not, and I know the prosecutor's thinking the same way, but I'm telling you, if you understand what these meds can do to people, you'd see that's not an indicator. In fact, the thing I posted here in the comments line was taken from, let's go ahead and show that now. If I can find it here, stand by. Make sure I don't lose his spot. One second. I'm trying to move stuff around on the screen here and it's not cooperating. Well, rather than showing, I'll just go ahead and say, I just Googled this. This is from Psychology Today on a Google AI search, which is not always totally accurate, but they are citing Psychology Today. And that's what I posted a little bit ago where it's in the chat here. It said, yes, a person can experience psychosis. Experiencing psychosis can be calculating because logical planning and reasoning can still occur within in a rational or delusional framework. While psychosis distorts a person's perception of reality, it does not erase their underlying cognitive capacity to form and execute structured plans. And then it talks about rational planning by psychosis. Delusional framework. A person may methodically plan actions based on beliefs that are completely false or ungrounded, such as planning to escape a perceived threat or acting on commands from hallucinations. All right, so that sounds like what they were talking about, her hearing voices. I put that one in the chat. The next one says, retain cognition, executive functioning, and problem-solving abilities can remain intact even when a person has lost touch with reality. That also is from Psychology Today. I also post that here. Oops. And then premeditation versus impulse. Research into forensic psychiatry shows that a significant portion of actions taken during psychosis involve clear premeditation rather than pure chaos or sudden impulse. So that's interesting. So there you have it. I think that's what the defense experts will be talking about. Okay, going back. We just got less
We didn't really get to that point.
on the
You weren't advised by the social worker or any staff there that there were any issues with your insurance. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But I wouldn't have cared either.
Would you have just paid for it if needed?
I would have paid anything. Yeah.
Ms. Sprague, is this a good time to break?
Yes.
All right, so members of the jury, we're going to break for the afternoon recess. And we'll see you back here about 2 o'clock, okay?
All rise. We're supposed to
and then they wanted
on your
to
chair.
report early today, so whoops. Hold on a second. Stand by. Let's go ahead and look at model jury instructions here. So this is for Massachusetts. And this has to do with lack of criminal responsibility. If the Commonwealth has proved the elements of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt, Commonwealth must also prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant was criminally responsible at the time of the alleged offense. Under the law, a person is not guilty if they lack criminal responsibility when they committed the offense. This is sometimes referred to as not guilty by reason of insanity. There's no burden on the defendant to prove that they lack criminal responsibility. That's like as I said in the beginning of this live stream, that makes a big difference compared to most states. Most states, it's the other way around. the Commonwealth meet its burden by proving that the defendant was criminally responsible for their conduct in either of two ways. The first way is for the Commonwealth to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant did not suffer from a mental disease or defect at the time of the alleged offense. So that remains to be seen, but it sounds like she's got a lot of crazy stuff going on in her mind. The next thing it says, a mental disease or defect need not fit into the formal medical diagnosis. It's a legal term, not a medical term. So it sounds like the lawyers could argue that without having to have necessarily all the medical folks backing it up. Just common sense and experience. It does not, however, include an abnormality that presents itself only by repeated criminal or otherwise antisocial behavior. It is for you to determine from the evidence whether the defendant had a mental disease or defect at the time of the alleged offense. And then it says a second way for the Commonwealth to prove the defendant was criminally responsible for the conduct is for the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that even if the defendant suffered from a mental disease or defect at the time of the alleged offense, the defendant nevertheless retains substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of their conduct and to conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. Does it sound like she had her ability to control herself? To establish the defendant had substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of their conduct, the Commonwealth must prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant appreciated, that is, the defendant knew or understood in some meaningful way that their conduct was either illegal or wrong. To establish that the defendant had substantial capacity to conform their conduct to the law's requirements, the Commonwealth must prove beyond reasonable doubt that any mental disease or defect that may have existed at the time of the alleged offense did not deprive the defendant of their ability to behave as the law requires, that is, to obey the law. So that's like I say, it's a real high burden. To summarize, if the Commonwealth proves beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant did not have a mental disease or defect at the time of the alleged offense, then that they've satisfied their burden. Otherwise, if they did suffer from mental disease or defect, the defendant nonetheless has retained the substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of their conduct or to conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. The Commonwealth has satisfied their burden of proving the defendant was criminally responsible. Remember, there's no burden on the defendant to prove they lack criminal responsibility. Rather, the burden is on the Commonwealth to prove beyond reasonable doubt that both the defendant committed the offense, which the defense is stipulating here, and the defendant was criminally responsible at the time they committed the offense. If you have a reasonable doubt whether the defendant committed any one of the required elements of the alleged offense, you must find the defendant not guilty. If you have a reasonable doubt as to whether the defendant was criminally responsible at the time of the offense, you must find the defendant not guilty by reason of lack of criminal responsibility. That's the key bottom line here. If you have a reasonable doubt on whether the defendant was criminally responsible at the time of the offense, you must find the defendant not guilty. And to cite some case law here, a defense of lack of criminal responsibility may be raised by any evidence which, if believed, might create a reasonable doubt concerning the defendant's criminal responsibility at the time of the crime. They are on the side of giving the instruction. Once the issue of insanity has been raised, the Commonwealth has to prove beyond reasonable doubt the defendant was sane at the time of the crime. It just sounds like insane cruelty. And this has to do with other instructions, so I won't go into that, but yeah, she also took some weed. Do we know what effect that had on her? Yeah, so in the end, Elmar, you're saying, what are my thoughts on the jury split 12 women and 6 men? Well, I think generally women can be tougher on women. So, but in this particular case, I understand most of the women are older in their 50s and 60s. And so most of them probably had children. And so some of them probably had postpartum or have heard about it or had friends or family members that have had it. Men wouldn't be able to personally experience that, but I think that 6 men on there, they could be sympathetic to her. I think it's going to really come down to what do they really think about these meds and what the doctors say. And I'm not sure what doctors the defense is going to call that Dr. La Posada, who was so phenomenal in the Karen Reed trial for the defense. Is she going to be called as witness by this attorney? He indicated that he wanted to, but did he give proper notice and all that? So is she going to be allowed? We just don't know because none of the openings talked about what doctors you're going to hear from. Jill, not Wendy. Here's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. All right. I had a psychotic reaction from taking Cipro for just 3 days. I was a complete zombie for nearly a month. It was terrifying. Yeah. And a lot of these meds, like benzos and stuff, you have quicker acting benzodiazepine drugs like Xanax, then you have longer acting ones like Valium and diazepam. So if Jill here can say that Cipro just did that for you. Cipro, I assume that's some kind of serotonin selective uptake inhibitor or whatever they call it, or a benzo. So that's what I'm saying, that if they get this kind of information out to the jury, they could look at this as like the rational explanation for something that is off the charts, irrational, evil, and cruel. The 2 you're saying, either way, she'll be institutionalized. I just hope she gets the med she requires. Yeah, so there's really no great win for the defense in this one because I don't see her getting out anytime soon. And then her state of care, I mean, it's going to be a huge expense for the state, no matter where she's at, to try to take care of her. Yeah, okay, Gravel. Gertie, you're saying Lindsay looked up directions at a nearby restaurant, 3V in Plymouth, which the prosecutor will use to prove premeditation. Yeah, exactly. But psychotic people and people on psych meds that go haywire can do that, just as I said in this Psychology Today excerpt. So I just think they're going to have a hard time getting a conviction. I think the best the prosecution will get is a hung jury. But like I say, I'm just speaking early here. We haven't seen the evidence play out. Making clay, strangling a 5-year-old child would have taken her a while. It takes at least 8 to 10 minutes to cut off air. So something must have gone through her head while she strangled him. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine what those kids went through. I can't imagine what the dad's going through, the grandparents. I mean, this is just. So I think it's going to be, either way, she's got basically a sentence in her mind that's beyond anything a cell or prison block can do. She's got to live with this. If she has any conscience, she's got to live with this. She wants to die, probably. So, all right. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. I'm not seeing you guys describe a lot of episodes you're coming across of people having bad reactions, other than that one on Cipro. But I could talk on and on about other people having extremely bizarre behaviors from meds, psych meds. So we'll see how much this was in her system. So I'm going to try to cover this as much as I can. Not sure if I'll cover it every night, but to the extent I will cover it at least a couple times a week, that's what my goal is. If I can cover it nightly, I will, but I don't know that's going to be possible. Next couple weeks, especially if this is going to last 6 weeks. I don't think it's going to last that long. But so, all right, you all have a great week. And my goal will be on tomorrow night, just do a quicker review. We're on over 2 hours tonight. So I'm going to try to do a quick review every night. I probably won't be doing a live replay of the trial excerpts. Okay, Jill, you're saying that Cipro is an antibiotic, but it does cause psychotic reactions. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, medicine can do such great things on one hand, but other things and a lot of psych meds, they can work for some people and just turn people into serial killers that take the exact same meds. But as I've said, her exact combination of meds and her physiological state, that's never been replicated and tested to see what would happen. You can't do that. It's impossible. So there's no, oh yeah, there's no court tomorrow. Thank you, Law and Lit. Yep, no court tomorrow. So Wednesday night then. Okay. The two, you're saying a juror has a funeral to attend. Okay. Did not know that. So thank you. Y'all take care. Good night.